Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Spirit of Prophecy podcast. Excited about another program today, and I have a guest on the show today. We have Brother Caleb Hurst, who is going to be sharing some information with us on the subject of Shekinah or Shekinah. That is a term that you've probably heard in Baptist churches, and amongst other churches. Baptists aren't the only ones that like to talk about the Shekinah or the Shekinah glory. Is another reference you'll hear to it. I've heard Shekinah referenced my entire life in Baptist churches, specifically when people are talking about Israel or when they're talking about the Old Testament. Pretty much anytime you see a reference to God and a cloud, everyone would start talking about the Shekinah glory. I'd hear that. Didn't have a whole lot of questions about it. I just kind of accepted that, it was probably just a Hebrew word, that it was legit, that it was from the Bible. But then several years ago, I watched Marching to Zion, and they had a whole segment on there about Shekinah and where that comes from. And I was just kind of embarrassed. I thought, wow, that's not biblical at all. In fact, it's probably something really bad. And other than what I saw on Marching to Zion, I've not done a whole lot of research on this subject. This is not something I know very much about at all, but I had referenced something about it in one of my other programs, and Caleb, he emailed me, I heard that I was thinking about discussing it, and he had a lot of information on it, and then he sent me over a ton of information, and I looked over some of it, and I'm just like, wow, this guy's done a lot of research. Rather than me going and just reading all this stuff, I thought I'm going to invite him on the program and let him talk about it. Now, we've never met before. I don't really know anything about Brother Caleb, but I was like, you know what? We're going to have him on the program and let him tell us what he knows about this subject. But before we do that, Caleb, would you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Caleb Hurst. I live in northern Arizona, and I have a little homestead going here, if you can call it that. We have a couple goats, we have chickens. I'm actually currently going to school to pursue my applied biology degree, so hopefully I can learn more about biology, and maybe I'll do debates on against evolutionists. So I don't know, but I also hope to have like a ministry helping churches build community gardens so they can serve the community in a different way. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm all about.
All right. So again, I was kind of overwhelmed with all the information that you sent me on this subject. What got you originally looking into this? Because a lot of preachers who are out there referring to this all the time, they obviously haven't done any study on it, because it doesn't take much study to find out this isn't really something from the Bible. So what was it that made you put this much research, time and effort into researching this?
Well, first I read I'm sure you're familiar with the book Who is Israel by Matt Fuse. And so when I first read that, I was like, wait, I've heard churches say that. I heard my church say that. So it kind of got me kind of not worried or anything like that, but kind of like concerned, like, where is this really coming from? And I want to do my due diligence of making sure that, the book was correct on that, and where the actual origins come from.
Yeah. No, I remember on Marching to Zion too, on that program, Brother First was on Marching to Zion. They showed the clip of Spock or Leonard Nimoy talking about Shekinah and talking about I'm like afraid to do the hand signal anymore. As a kid watching Star Trek, we would all do the live long and prosper thing to each other. Now just kind of knowing where some of that comes from, it's like I'm afraid to even do it. But everybody's familiar with the Spock greeting, the live long and prosper sign. And so that's an interesting clip where he talks about that. But again, in the Baptist world, we always hear these references to the Shekinah glory, and it seems like half the time when you hear it, it's the Shekinah glory. Like, it's kind of almost like a Southern thing, or I've noticed John Hagee says it the same way. Now, do you have any idea how that term got into Baptist churches? What made Baptists start talking about Shekinah?
Well, I don't know specifically about Baptist, but I do know how it got into the church. There's a lot of people who throughout time have been trying to infiltrate the church with this word. For example, there's this guy. Let me look. Don't remember their names.
Mm-hmm.
John Milton, and then this guy Postal, and they were really into like the Cabal and researching the Cabal. They were philosophers, and they were trying to infiltrate the church with it. A couple documents that I've read, people were kind of complaining about how, hey, these people are trying to push these words or push this idolatry on in the church. So that's how I think it got in, and it kind of got popular. Yeah, so I think that's kind of how it got in.
Now, about what time era were those guys in?
So one of them was like 1500s, and then like 1920s, where these people started coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least those two, if I remember those dates correctly.
Yeah. Now this is my opinion based on just observation, but when it comes to eschatology and just a lot of dumb things that I've said in the past, when you find out you're in error, you always want to ask yourself, where did I go wrong? What made me get this wrong? And a lot of times I'm like, I realize, hey, I heard this from this person. And we just repeat what we hear a lot, especially in the Baptist world. And so when you start when I was like tracing back a lot of things that I had said wrong, that I had heard other people say that was wrong, I was always finding things leading to John Hagee. And John Hagee is somebody who I seem to remember talking about that. And like John Hagee, nothing has originated with John Hagee, but I feel like he has popularized a lot of things, especially when it comes to eschatology, especially when it comes to a lot of the very violently pro-Israel type stuff. A lot of it seems to be coming from him. And I do think that for a long time, Baptists were repeating him, parroting him. And it is one of those things where a lot of Baptists have quit talking about Shekinah and talking about the Shekinah glory. But at the same time, there's some that haven't got the memo yet. And that's one of the reasons I want to do this podcast. For those who are still out there and haven't got the memo, that when you're saying Shekinah, you did not get that from the Bible. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, it's not in our King James, but is that word Shekinah, is that even in the Hebrew Bible?
No, it's not. For the word for God's glory, it's actually, if I can say it right, kabod. That's the word for glory, not Shekinah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nowhere to be found.
Because whenever I started looking into this too, it was always when there was a cloud reference, whether it talked about, when the tabernacle, the glory of God would fill the tabernacle, Moses on the Mount Sinai and things like that. Usually there was something where you see a cloud involved, and I would look up a lot of the Hebrew words surrounding that. Even, I don't speak Hebrew or anything like that, but it did not appear that there was anything that resembled Shekinah. And so, when I heard that word's not even in the Hebrew Bible, then, you have to wonder, where are these Baptists getting this, who supposedly are just preaching Bible? They tell you that they're preaching Bible, but yet they're using a Hebrew word that's not even in the Hebrew Bible. And so obviously they're just repeating something they heard. So I guess what is the origin of this word? How did it? What did it mean to Hebrew people? What does that word mean to Hebrew people?
So the earliest um, reference I could find was in the Babylonian Talmud. And so that's where it came from. And then historians, like Jewish historians, uh, Jewish rabbis, and scholars claim that um, not particularly this word, but the um, herself comes from basically Old Testament, like how you were saying, like guiding Moses and guiding the Hebrews into Israel and God's presence and stuff like that. So they said it's basically ancient and was always there. But through my research, it's that word didn't really pop up until the Babylonian Talmud.
Right, and the Babylonian Talmud that didn't even come out till what 300 or 400 years after the time of Christ, according to my understanding.
Yeah, I actually have it. I have it right here. It's from the third to the sixth century AD. So yeah, only it came out after 70 AD. So after that, when the Jews were scattered.
Mm-hmm. Right, and well, and what I don't think a lot of Baptists understand whenever we talk about Judaism today, we're still, um, for lack of a better term, we're giving these people their preferred pronouns, preferred names, and things when we refer to their religion as Judaism. And the problem with calling it that is it does, you're verbally connecting them with the Judaism of the Bible. But the reality is, what we have today is more Talmudic Judaism,
Yeah.
which came hundreds of years after true Judaism. True Judaism became Christians because the true Jews followed their Messiah, Jesus Christ, and
Yeah.
we are a part of that today. And it's interesting too that the Talmudic Judaism that's popular, that's big today, it's from the Babylonian Talmud, and it's one of the many reasons a lot of people too they connect Israel, modern day Israel, with Babylon of the Bible. And when you look at their beliefs, I mean, it much more resembles all of the false idolatrous religions and things that Israel was always getting in trouble with in their history. They were always messing with the gods of the heathen. And after their final rejection of Christ, it's like then we kind of have a full embracing of it. And so now, not only do we have the Talmudic Judaism of today, but sadly, many Christians are accepting a lot of their customs, a lot of their terminology, and even some of their beliefs sometimes, and like connecting it with what we believe as Christians. And there really is no connection to it all because, like, when it comes to this Shekinah, too, and I don't know if maybe you could say more about this, but according to the Cabala or the Jews, that it's kind of a reference to the female nature of God. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, it's actually much worse than that. Um, so, um, so the Babylonian Talmud. I'll read this for you guys right now. This is in chapter 4, Worldly Affairs, page 8. And you can download Babylonian Talmud and you can check it out for yourself online. It's like a free PDF file. And so it says, and when Abraham saw the angels, the Shekinah came and stood above him, and he addressed the angels, saying, "My master, wait a while until I take leave of the Shekinah, for you also must respect her." So how I read that, Shekinah, and it goes to her. So it's referencing Shekinah as a she. Um, and Kabbalists now these days will refer to her as the Queen of Heaven. So where do we get the Queen of Heaven? At least in the Bible, Ishtar, Ashtoreth, Ashroth. So that's where it's actually where they're getting this goddess. She's a goddess, and I mean I don't know your opinion on on these on these things, but my belief is that behind every idol there's a demon. So like Shekinah is a demon, and you're invoking her name.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. The Bible talks about too when they um, sacrifice meat to these idols, they're actually doing sacrifice to devils. And so I believe with every false god, there is probably a demon associated with it somewhere. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I do want to show this too because, one of the things that really bothers me, and, as somebody too who I love Jewish people just like I love anybody. I think we should love people. But when it comes to their religion, I absolutely despise their religion. I do not connect it with the biblical Judaism of the Bible. I don't think people realize how satanic it is. And I think, um, you know, one thing that's kind of an interesting study to look at sometime is if you go into the New Testament and you can look at kind of the progression in harshness in the language towards the Jews. It kind of increases as time goes on. And by the time we get to the book of Revelation, it's flat out calling them the synagogue of Satan. And I think it does that for a reason because before the destruction of Jerusalem, God gave them 40 years, just like God gave them 40 years in the wilderness. God gave them 40 years to get on board with the new covenant. And when they didn't, destruction came. The temple was gone. That was one of the clearest signs that the old covenant was done. It was finished. They should have got the hint at the renting of the veil, but they didn't get that. And so there's no reason left to question whether or not God's presence is gone from that temple, the new covenant has come in, than when the temple was destroyed. And so the Judaism that appeared after that, it is a very sinister thing. It is a very evil thing. And yet Christians today, they've just kind of have this adoration towards all things Jewish. They almost see them as like good luck charms. We need to find one that we can be a blessing to. They even look at their language as some kind of like magical language. Like we can understand the Bible even more if we understand Hebrew. And let's go get commentaries listening to, and let's see what the Jews said about what they're saying today about the Old Testament. And I mean, several times just in the last year, I've had people telling me, in order for you to understand this passage in the Old Testament properly, you need to read after Rabbi so-and-so. And it's just like, I'm sorry, but I refuse to listen to people who can't understand Isaiah 53, who can't understand Psalms 22. And, but it's like they think there's something magical about these people. And maybe there is. It's just not good magic. It's bad, which all magic is bad. I think, Disney's helped us think magical is like a good thing. But I do want to show this clip. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this. This was at the Democratic National Convention. Now, I forgot the name of this rabbi that did this prayer here, but this guy is referred to as Biden's rabbi, even though Joe Biden is a Catholic. This guy is referred to as Biden's rabbi, and he does a prayer, and he does a double Spock hand signal here, which is a Shekinah thing. And so let's go ahead and watch this clip right here.
Yesadnai panave lecha, v'yesem lecha, shalom. May God turn toward you and grant you that most precious gift, the gifting of wholeness and the gift of peace, and let us say a heartfelt Amen.
All right, so there you go. So it's obviously that hand signal thing. It's a Jewish thing. And it is something too we don't see him doing anything like that in the Bible. Do you know where that whole, obviously we think of it as the Vulcan greeting, where did that come from?
I actually don't know. That was one of the things I didn't really. I just always thought it was just from Star Trek.
5 or 6 guys get up on the bema on the stage, and they're facing the congregation. They get their talit over their heads, and they start this chanting. I think it's called duchening. And my father said to me, "Don't look." So everybody's got their eyes covered with their hands, or they've got their talit down over their faces, or turned away, turned their back to these guys. And I hear this strange sound coming from them. They're not singers, they were shouters. And dissonant, it was all discordant. And they were doing like, that kind of wailing. And all discordant, not together, not in unison. And then the leader would shout out, Yevorechecho! And the rest of them would respond, Yevorechecho, Adonai v'yishmerecho! It was chilling. You know? Whoa, something major is happening here. So I peeked, and I saw them with their hands stuck out from beneath their talit like this towards the congregation. I thought, wow. Something really got hold of me. I thought, I had no idea what was going on, but the sound of it and the look of it was magical. This is the shape of the letter Shin, Hebrew alphabet, Shin. Very interesting letter in the language. It's the first letter in the word Shaddai, the first letter in the word Shalom, first letter in the word Shekinah, which is the name of the feminine aspect of God, who supposedly was created to live amongst humans, the Shekinah. Why you're not supposed to look came to me much, much later, much later. My wife Susan has a cousin who's a rabbi here in Los Angeles at Temple Israel. And I was telling him this story, and he said the reason you don't look is the legend is that during that benediction, Yevorechecho, the Shekinah comes into the sanctuary to bless the congregation. And you don't want to see that because it's so powerful, you could really be seriously injured, or it could be fatal. So that's why you protect yourself by hiding your eyes. Don't look. I survived. So I said to the director, I think we should have some special greeting that Balkans do, because he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, humans, we have these rituals, things that we do. We shake hands, we nod to each other, we bow to each other, we salute each other. What do Vulcans do? So I suggested this. He said, okay. And that's how we did it as a greeting, a Vulcan greeting. Boy, that just took off through the culture. It was amazing. Within days after it was on the air, I was getting it on the street. People doing this to me, waving to me in this Vulcan gesture. That's interesting. And it's been that way to this day. It's almost 50 years later, people are still doing it. It just touched the magic chord. Most people, to this day, still don't know what it's all about. A lot of people do, because I've talked about it a lot. I've been asked the question, where did that come from? And I have very readily put out this story.
I mean, I'm sure it comes from demonic origins, just because a lot of those shows are, at least personally, my opinion, is demonic. If you look at Disney, they always add witchcraft in there. And so, you know, I know that I used to do the, you know, like, oh, peace sign, right? And that's actually like pagan origins, upside down cross broken. So, like, you know, we don't know what we're sometimes doing. And so just thank God that he does have patience with us and will really show us errors in our ways. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it came from a demonic origins.
Right. Yeah. And according to Spock, too, that was something that he saw when he was younger. He observed where the Jews, whenever they would pray, they would put the thing over their head as a way to kind of hide themselves from the Shekinah glory, and they weren't supposed to look. And here's the thing, too, you know, because I get where Christians, we look at that, and then we maybe connect that with Moses, because remember how Moses, he got in the presence of God and he had to put a veil over his face and all that. And the thing that people need to understand about a lot of this Jewish mysticism stuff is there's always going to be some kind of similarity to something we see in the Bible, but it's always ends up being a perverted form of it. And so it's one of those things where Christians for sure should not get caught up in it. We also see, there's Baptist preachers that are well known for going around preaching sermons about the Jewish prayer shawl. And so because of the fact we see Elijah wrapping his head in a mantle and Moses putting a veil over his face, then all of a sudden they use that as like biblical proof for everything the modern day Jewish rabbis are saying. And it's very deceptive. Okay? And people need to see through this. Yes, Elijah wrapped his face in a mantle. Yes, Moses put a veil over his face. That does not now mean that when a rabbi comes to you and then he shows you their prayer shawl, that's exactly what it looked like in the Bible days. You don't know that. The practices that they do with it, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what Elijah was doing. That's what Moses was doing. You don't know that at all. And typically, if you want to find the origins of these things as far as what it looks like today, it's always a perverted form, but typically it's from the Babylonian Talmud. But a lot of this stuff too, and this is something else I've not done a lot of research on. Maybe you know more about this and tell us what you know about it. But you hear a lot of reference to the Cabala. What do you know about the Cabala that you could share with us?
So basically, I look at it as basically the Pharisees. And it basically started with Solomon and him inviting foreign wives into the kingdom, or not the kingdom, but Israel. And so that's where witchcraft and started really coming in. And I know that they worshipped right after Moses with the golden calf, but it just seems really right after, like, Solomon opened the door and brought in a whole bunch of witchcraft. And so these Kabbalists, modern Kabbalists, use a lot of that history and use a lot of that worship of the ancient gods, and started really involving and mixing and like Jewish mysticism and all that type of stuff, and also Christianity too. And so they try to get Christians to come on in. And I know specifically for the Masonic Lodge, which there's a lot of Kabbalists who also join that. There, once you get up to, I think, 33 degree, or like one of the highest degrees, they'll reveal to you that Jesus is actually Satan. So it flips everything upside down. And so it's very insidious. And that's kind of what Kabbalists really are. And I mean, it's a mixture of things also Catholicism, like they do Mary worship, which they also call her Queen of Heaven. So Kabbalists just kind of mix everything together and claim that the God of the Bible are all these gods combined. So yeah, it's not good.
Right. Well, it's basically too, there's a lot of Jewish magic stuff that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And historically too, when you look at some of the worst of the Jews that you hear talk that have promoted a lot of the wickedness and stuff, a lot of times you'll see that they were Kabbalistic, if I'm saying that right, Jews. And those are always the worst ones. These things are deeply perverted and deeply demonic. And again, for some reason, when you read the Old Testament, again, obviously you see Israel as the good guys, but they were special because they were chosen to be the people that the Messiah was going to come from. But what people are failing to factor in there, so while we ought to be cheering for them as we're reading through the Bible, they were constantly getting involved with other gods. Constantly. When Jesus Christ came to earth, the vast majority of the Jews rejected him as the Messiah and literally killed the Son of God. And then they continued on to persecute the Christians, and that's what we see throughout the New Testament. In Revelation, we see him referred to as the synagogue of Satan. And yet, somehow, people think today that we're going to go and we're going to get some kind of insight from Jews. It makes no sense at all. They should be some of the people we're going to be the most scared to get information from, because and it's like the older the history too, the more likely we think it's going to be related to the truth. But it's just like, no, their entire history was almost always them getting away from God. I mean, it's the generation that saw the Red Sea part. Shortly later, they were the ones that were making a golden calf. And so over and over, we see that kind of thing. And that's why I don't understand this fascination with them and this attitude that they have so much knowledge, that there's so much that they can give to us. No, it's a miracle that the scriptures survived with them. It's a miracle that they survived as the people so the Messiah could come. All of that is a miracle, but it was also a work that God did. And God did that work. He fulfilled that work. He kept his promise of a coming Messiah who would make payment for sin, make that final sacrifice for sin. And so, today, to look at a new religion, that started after the time of Christ, that embraced everything bad that the Jews ever got caught up in, and that has left the Messiah out. I just think that's one of the most ridiculous things, and it's embarrassing listening to preachers still just repeat stuff and talking about things like Shekinah glory and stuff like that. And so, for people who would like to know more about stuff, what do you think are some good resources for learning more about the Talmud, the Cabala, and not even too, because obviously I wouldn't recommend people read a lot of that stuff. You don't want to get caught up in a bunch of satanic stuff. But as far as just understanding the truth of where this stuff comes from, do you know of any good resources out there?
I mean, you can just legitimately just Google Cabala, and you'll find tons of articles. It's out there. It's Satan wants to put this out there so Christians or non-believers really get involved in it, because when you start reading it, it is very interesting, and you can kind of start being like, oh, that it puts doubt in your mind, because they'll say, oh, well, God is not, like, you need more information on God because God's more deeper than what you think you think he is. So, they start putting doubts of, like, the Trinity, right? I mean, like, well, there's the Shekinah, right? Which is God's wife. And like, you didn't know about that, did you? And so, you can start going down this rabbit hole. So I just be careful going down the rabbit hole. But I mean, you can legitimately just Google it, and there's one of the sources is let me look it up here. It is khouse.org, and they'll give you information about the Cabala. Then you can go to that's what it was, My Jewish Learning, and they'll just put it out there for you. And you can go on. I don't know if anybody will know Jester, the basically academic articles, and you can just type in Shekinah or Cabala, and it'll get a whole bunch of information out. Or you can ask a New Ager, because New Agers like all that stuff too. So I mean, really, it's all out there. So if you need to do your own research, then it's quite easy.
Right. Yeah. In fact, I did a program recently about the sons of God, and somebody left a link to a video. I think it was Michael Heisner was his name, and he was saying that when you read Genesis 6, if you are not familiar with this collection of writings, I forgot when they were from a certain part of the world, these ancient writings. He said if you're not familiar with those things, you're going to read that out of context. And it's just like, wait, what? So it's possible to just read the Bible. And if we don't read these other writings, we're reading the Bible out of context. And he was using it he uses this to prove that these were angelic beings and stuff like that. And I'm seeing more and more Christians turn to a lot of these, ancient Jewish writings and things, acting like we have to have these things to understand the Bible. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's like everybody forgets all the history of the Jewish people that we have in our Old Testament. It's almost all bad. Almost all of it is bad. And so, yeah, it's when it comes to the stuff that you sent me, because like, so there was a lot of information you sent me. Is there a way that other people could get that information from you? Is it online anywhere?
Yeah, I don't have anywhere to kind of post it or anything like that. But I don't know if you can find a way for yourself to be able to, like, you're more than welcome to be able to like post it on your channel,
Okay.
the Word document or any of those documents. So.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'll post the links in the description. And so let me ask you this too. So I don't know if you've had this opportunity very often, but when have you had a chance, or have you ever approached a preacher or somebody who's been talking about Shekinah with any of this information? Have you had any experience doing that? And I guess if you had, how do you recommend people approach people with this?
So I would recommend just being gentle about it, because especially if they're not once saved, always saved, they're going to be like, don't blaspheme the Holy Spirit. You're going to lose, you're going to lose your salvation. So they're afraid to, chuck this term out, or they're afraid to be like, oh, well, I have to be 100% sure that it's demonic, or, I could lose my salvation. So my recommendation, especially if your pastor is, saying this, and it depends on what degree also. I mean, if they keep on saying it every, 5 minutes, then definitely you can, like show it to them, and be like, hey, like this is wrong, and have the courage to do that, because God has called us to tell people when they're in error, in a loving way. Don't do it all angry. And that's the best I can say to do, and kind of put a little, if you don't want to use, my information, with my Word document, you can, create your own, and try to be patient with them. And then also pray to God, ask the Holy Spirit what you should do. Because there's a time where if they're blatantly ignoring the facts, they're willfully ignorant, you got to ask the Holy Spirit. It's like, do you want me to still be in this church, or should I move on to a different church? Unfortunately, because I just feel like it can lead down a dangerous road, especially with this whole Jewish idolatry of worshiping the Jews. Because I've heard pastors say like, oh, we need to support the Jews so they can bring the Antichrist. And so that way we can help prophecy get fulfilled. I'm like, wait, why are we trying to help the Antichrist come in? Like, we should be not necessarily trying to stop prophecy or stop those things, but what we should be doing is getting as much Christians, or getting as much non-believers to become Christian, right? We should be evangelizing, getting people saved. And when the end comes, the end comes. But you don't want to be, stuck at a church that's like, oh, let's, help the Jews, because that's not helping them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I will say, in my experience, I've yet to see a pastor get confronted with the truth about this and not fix it. I think it's one of those things that's so obvious. But I will say this, if you do correct a pastor, you do want it to be as private as possible and in a non-public way, because I'll tell you what happened to me. Again, I don't know that I ever said the word Shekinah from the pulpit. I hope I never did. I don't know if I ever did, but I will say that when I watched Marching to Zion and I saw that portion of it, I felt stupid. Because even if I never said it from the pulpit, I'm sure I had repeated it at some point. I thought it was true. I thought it was a Hebrew word for the glory of God. And it was just so glaringly, obviously false with just that much research that it was just one of those things where it was like, man, we probably shouldn't just repeat everything we hear. And so, thankfully, I hadn't completely embarrassed myself with it yet to where pride was able to come in. But I will say that I think most pastors that have been made aware of the truth of this, they've quit saying it. I think there's some that just haven't got the memo. And that's another reason I wanted to bring this up, just put it out there, because even recently, and it's typically older preachers. Again, a lot of older preachers, they're behind on internet stuff, and so they're the last ones to get the memo. I'm still hearing these guys say that. And it's like, has nobody lovingly corrected these people or challenged them on this kind of thing? And I don't think they have. And so it's one of those things that anything that we can take away from them, because most of the time, if you are going to hear somebody use that term Shekinah glory, they're probably going to be preaching something in relation to prophecy and the Jews, and it's probably going to be false. They're going to be God's not done with Israel people. They're probably going to be pre-tribbers who are saying Shekinah glory, and it's just one more thing. There's just one more thing to just show them that these people just polyparrot what they hear. They've not actually studied the scriptures on these things. And so I think it is. It's a real easy, it's one of their helium balloons that they're using to float around on. It's one more that we can easily pop. And eventually we're going to take everything away from them. But it is an easy one. And so this idea of this feminine aspect of God, it's becoming more and more popular. In fact, once when I was in Arizona, I was out soul winning, and I'm assuming it had to do with the church that was in this area. But I talked to two different people who brought up how they believe in God the Mother. And I'm like, what? And they proceeded to tell me some weird stuff. And I never heard anybody refer to God the Mother before, but that was something that they believe in. I don't know if it's related to that, but either way, I think a lot of it has to do with people trying to get connected to their Hebrew roots. And the problem with that is, okay, I get it. We have a connection to the Jews of the Old Testament, but we should find any of that connection in the Bible, not in the self-proclaimed Hebrews, the self-proclaimed Israel, those who say they are Jews and are not. If we get our information about Israel, the Bible, or any of those things from them, we're going to be led down the wrong path.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jesus did refer to them as the devil's children, specifically the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, basically, they're non-believers. So, any information that we get from non-believers doesn't mean that they're 100% wrong about something, or if they point out something in the Bible, like, oh, hey, there's something here that may be, wrong, or oh, I have better information, right? Two truths and a lie is still a lie. So, Christians have to be very careful where they're getting information from, and always check it, and always make sure that something didn't start off as something that was from Satan or anything of that nature. So, you got to make sure that you're on top of your game and your discernment. Ask the Lord, giving more discernment, because he'll start pointing things out to you, and like, hey, there's something here. There's something here that's is wrong, and you can sniff it out and be like, and you can expose it because
Yeah. Well, if I may do a little commercial for my one of my sermons for this Sunday, I'm going to be talking about too. There's truth, and then you could say that there are labels or names that we attach to that truth, and truth is always truth. But the problem is labels. Sometimes what they represent can change over time. For example, there's a lot of talk right now about how we are having a political realignment right now, which is very true with the Republicans and the Democrats. The Democrats, they do not even resemble the Democrats of, even 20 or 30 years ago. The Republicans do not even resemble the Republicans of 20 or 30 years ago. But at the same time, some people are so married to the term Republican or Democrat that no matter what these people stand for, they are going to continue to support them. And I think one of the most effective things that the devil ever did is when he helped the UN allow the Zionist state that started in 1948 to take the name of Israel. And so people see that name, they see that title, Israel, and I understand why people would want to be supportive of Israel. That is a good name. That is a Bible name. The problem is what Israel today represents does not even resemble what the Israel of God, the Israel of the Bible represents. It absolutely doesn't represent Israel the man and what he stood for and what he commanded his children. It's not in any way connected, but people, they just see that label and they're going to keep supporting it. We've got to recognize it's changed. That, even the name Baptist, there's Baptists are changing. And we got to understand truth doesn't change, but labels and what they represent often change. And so, Christians have got to learn to get their guard up when they hear somebody come along who claims to be Jewish, even a Messianic Jew or of Israel, because these people historically have been in deception, and nothing has changed on that except it's just getting a whole lot worse. And Christians are pulling a lot of crazy information. They're getting it from modern day Jews that in reality it's Babylonian, Talmudic stuff. It's from the Cabala, and these are very wicked and dangerous things. And so I guess to kind of close this out, do you have any, final things, any final information that you think we ought to know when it comes to this subject of Shekinah?
No, not really. I mean, just know that it's a goddess and that there's a demon behind it, and that this demon's function seems to be trying to replace the Holy Spirit. So in a lot of these, I shouldn't say necessarily Christian churches, right? I feel like there's a little bit more protection there, but it's actually wolves in sheep's clothing, and they start using this term. They're really invoking this goddess. They know that they're doing this, and they know that that you can, a Christian should be to, go to these churches and being like, there's something off here. Like your discernment should be saying, hey, there's something I can feel something here. That's bad. But if Christians don't have that in tune, right, and don't have a good discernment, unfortunately, they can be ignorant and being like, oh, Shekinah glory, and they can be praising and thinking it's the Holy Spirit. So, that's more my warning, my closing thoughts of that's at risk here, and also it makes Christians look silly because of our friends, me and my wife's friends, she's a witch, and she's like, you guys are pagan, you guys worship different gods. It's like, no, we don't. But where she's getting it from is from people who are invoking the name of Shekinah. And we even text her saying like, hey, what do you know about this? She's like, oh, you should keep on learning about it. You should keep on going deeper and deeper and deeper about this subject, because you'll find the truth and you'll find that, Shekinah is better than God and all this stuff. So yeah, that is pretty much my closing thoughts. Like, stay away from it, and warn pastor about it, because that's, very important not to be deceived.
Amen. All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the program and talking about this, and and all those out there watching this. I'll leave links to the stuff that he sent me. I said I'd never met Brother Caleb before, but when he sent me that email, it had so much information on that. I'm like, I just rather have him come on the program and talk about it. But I think it's a safe guess to just say that I don't think when we are talking about the glory of God that he likes us using a word that refers to a female goddess when referring to his glory. So I think if you've done it before and you did it in ignorance, I believe God will forgive your ignorance. But you need to repent of that ignorance, and you need to not say that stuff anymore. You need to call people out gently when they say those things. Don't make them look stupid, then pride is going to set in. But privately, respectfully confront people on this. This is a lot of foolishness. We don't need to get caught up in this stuff. We don't need unbelievers of any religion, of any race, helping us understand the scriptures. We need the scriptures, and you will never study your King James Bible and talk about Shekinah, and you'll never study your Hebrew Bible and come away talking about Shekinah. So let's just let this be a lesson to all of us, to not just repeat what we hear, no matter how popular the preacher was that said it. Don't just repeat what you hear. There's a lot of dumb stuff being said out there in the name of Bible preaching, in the name of Christianity, and even in the name of independent fundamental Baptists. So let's watch out for that. But thank you so much for watching this program. Make sure you like it and share it. Some programs we want to rub people's noses in certain facts. This is one where we easily could. We easily could, but I don't think we need to. I think this one should be so easy for people to repent of. I think we should be gentle. And if they will not be corrected, then go ahead and rub their noses in it. But until then, thank you all for watching this. God bless you. We will see you all next time.